In a different universe, the entire world was celebrating the defeat of the greatest villain. Hordes of people had gathered to shower praise at the hero who defeated the Demon King and brought peace to the world. There will be no more monster invasions, and no more innocent civilians will die needlessly. This fantasy world of Vizard has finally reached an era of peace after centuries of war. In an alley, two kids were running to see the hero who had just come victorious from his battles. The boy urges his sister to hurry up before they miss everything. For them, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity they can't miss. While running, the boy comes across a passing figure in a dark robe. His presence is such that the boy's body freezes on the spot. When his sister catches up to him, she's confused to see the frozen state of her brother and looks in the direction of the robed figure. She doesn't understand why the man is walking in the opposite direction of the hero's parade, and her brother is scared that she might draw unwanted attention. He tells her to look away. It looks like the boy was able to identify that the robed figure is a dark magician, a sinister class of mages who dabble in the powers of darkness. His sister doesn't really understand the big deal behind being a dark magician, but the brother educates her that it basically means that person in the dark robe is cursed. The man in dark robes carries a white sack on his shoulder and walks a lonely road toward the cathedral, where the saint of this era awaits his arrival. As she was gazing at the world that will finally get to see some peace, she hears a knock on the door. When she turns, the robed figure stands there at the entrance. Her golden hair is a symbol of her divine powers, and her white robes signify her purity. She looks at the man and welcomes him back. In contrast, the robed figure's dark clothes and silent presence give off nothing but sinister vibes. If the saint is a being of pure energy, the robed man is the incarnation of darkness. His name is Minold, and when he unpacks the sack which contains the head of the Demon King, it is revealed to us that he was, in fact, the true hero all along. But due to the dark nature of his powers, he had to become a shadow while a useless man in fancy armor took all the glory. The saintess thanks the dark magician on behalf of the empire, but her words are cut short by the magician. He has but one desire. He did all that was asked of him, and now he wants the saintess to fulfill her end of the promise. The saintess wears a grim expression but assures the magician that she remembers her promise and will be sure to fulfill it. And since that will be the case, perhaps she should refer to the dark magician not as Minold but as Kim In-jun, his original name before he was forcefully summoned to this world. Standing under the statue of the kingdess, the saintess tries to have a heart-to-heart discussion with the protagonist. She tells him that she's sorry he had to bear such a heavy responsibility and explains that she did not give him such a job because she hated him. In fact, she will be forever in his great debt. But the man replies that he hates her so much that he could die right now. Even when met with such a cold response, the saintess says that she will do everything in her power to change the people's opinion about the dark mages in this world. She begs the man to reconsider his wish to go back to his old world, but there's nothing to consider in Kim In-jun's mind. He replies that he has already been used enough. Now he simply wishes to return to his world in one piece. She sighs and says that if he stays behind for the sake of the empire, she promises that he will be rewarded for all of the ill treatment he has received thus far, and more. But it looks like she was too late, and the dark magician tells her to stop her acting. The saintess protests that she's not acting and is being very sincere with her words, to which the protagonist replies that there is nothing she can give him. The saintess's eyes widen with surprise. By virtue of being the king's chosen, she holds quite a lot of power in this world. So what does this man desire that she cannot provide? He replies that he was brought here by force, he was used like a slave, and now she wants him to stay behind so he can wipe her ass some more. For him to forsake his life like this, what can the saintess give him in return? She answers that she can grant whatever he desires because, if you were to cease existing, the empire's peace may not hold for long. But then, the protagonist asks for his first wish to be granted. He wants to eat Korean fried chicken. But the saintess doesn't even know what it looks like. He asks for kimchi, but once again, the saintess doesn't know anything about it. He complains that the food in this world is disgusting. He has eaten nothing but high-calorie biscuits all these years. How can I be expected to live in a world where I'm forced to eat such trash? And if I can't be provided with good food, can the saintess at least provide me with a gaming PC and a good internet connection? Of course, none of that is possible in an undeveloped world like this. In the end, the saintess clenches her fist and gives up on keeping him in this world. He never belonged here in the first place. She drops her head in defeat and agrees to start the return ceremony right away. She takes him to the summoning chamber, where the protagonist reminisces about his memories of the past, when he was first summoned, and is happy that he will never have to see this place again. The The saintess tells him to stand in the summoning circle in the middle and proceeds to start the return ceremony. A bunch of magic patterns start moving under the protagonist's feet right away. She tells him that she will start by removing the protection of the saint from his body first. Kim Min-jun takes off his glove and looks at the hand with the saint's symbol on it. Even though it's called a protection, it's just a leash. It stops the summoned person from fighting the saint. He's glad to finally be getting rid of it. The saintess holds out her hands, and a radiant light purifies the symbol from the protagonist's hand. She seems quite perplexed because not only is the dark magician giving up on all the incredible power he built up over the years, he's also refusing to take all the riches and fame that he would get by staying here. But the man is fed up with this world and asks the saintess to mind her own business instead. He asks why the saintess isn't concerned about this situation. Once the symbol is completely gone, I could kill you if I wanted to, but the woman replies, I know I am the root cause of all the hatred in your heart. If you were to kill me, I would gladly accept my death. Now that the protection is undone, she tells him, kill me if you'd like, and if you have no such desire, I'd like to start the next stage of the ceremony. The next step involves removing the powers the protagonist has obtained in the world of Vizard, and the saintess steps back from the circle to complete this process. But this is where things won't go according to the saintess, but how the dark magician wants. He quickly hurls a rope of binding dark energy to subdue the saintess and hold her up in the air. She tells the man that possessing the powers of this world will kill him if he uses the dimensional gate. What he's doing is complete nonsense. But this man worked himself to death to obtain these powers. There's no way he will leave them behind before going back. He drops the saintess on her ass and proceeds to open the dimensional gate himself. Even though her life was spared, the saintess is more concerned that the dark magician will never be able to open the dimensional gate with his unholy powers and will probably die as a result. But looks like her worries were unwarranted, since the protagonist was already standing there with a fully functioning portal. Even then, the saintess warns him that he's risking his life by attempting to travel the dimensions so rashly. But he was already aware of such things. That's why he practiced his magic thousands of times to perfect it. He's confused why the people of this world divide magic into light and darkness in the first place. When he reached the peak, he realized that all magic is the same anyway. In any case, he puts his hand in his pocket and says that there is something he would like to give to the saintess before he leaves. What could it be? Nothing. It's just a fist, which he tells the saintess to shove up her ass as he enters the portal, knowing that he will never have to see the stupid world ever again. She shouts for the protagonist to stop before the portal destabilizes and kills the caster, but it was already too late. The summoning chamber was soon filled with waves of bright purple energy, and then the portal collapsed on itself and vanished into thin air, leaving the saintess all by herself in the chamber. She slams her fist on the floor in anger. Even though they had their differences, she's upset that she was hated to this extent when she did nothing but fulfill her duty. She never wanted to make anyone suffer, and she never enjoyed putting the protagonist through all that hardship. But now, none of that matters since the two of them are worlds apart from each other. In an unassuming building on Earth, purple lightning sparks, and Kim In-jun is teleported inside. Finally, he's back on the planet he was taken from. Even though he did it so confidently, he felt like he was going to die during the dimensional travel. But all of that is finally over. As he stands, he finds himself in the same room he was summoned from. When he looks at his table, his phone is still charging. This sensation of having your phone in your hand, Min-jun can't describe in words how much he missed this feeling. And his favorite game, Dungeon Power Fighter, is still installed. Only when he opened the game did the reality start kicking in his mind, and he couldn't help but laugh maniacally at his successful return to Earth. But it's too soon to be happy. For some reason, there's no internet connectivity in his apartment. And outside, a squad of soldiers is hugging the walls as if they are in a war zone. The unit commander asks if they're correctly headed in the direction of the CRE Fae, and the scout confirms that they're on the path relayed by the radio location. He asks his corporal why regular soldiers like them were dispatched to deal with something so dangerous, and the corporal is just as confused. He says that such questions should be asked to headquarters. He knows nothing. Nothing can be done now, and they have no choice but to fight. The soldiers take a deep breath and get ready for battle. On the corporal's signal, they rush to the road and turn the corner to shoot the enemy. But what they see is completely different from what they were after. Kim Min-jun is walking the streets, pissed at the fact that his phone is getting no network connection and not a single store is open in the area, even though it's the middle of the day. The soldiers are confused to see a civilian in an area that was restricted from access and shout for the young man to come back to them. Min-jun is also surprised to see the armed soldiers. He wonders what the army is doing in a civilian area, assuming they must be doing training drills. He apologizes for getting in the way, and that's when the soldiers notice something behind him. "Run away as fast as you can," they shout. When Minjun turns around to see what has the soldiers so flustered, he couldn't have been more confused by the bizarre sight before him. A huge wolf-like monster is leaping at him, claws out to rip him apart. But he isn't surprised by the monster. He's surprised that something so weak-looking has the soldiers so scared. After all, he just came from a world where he fought much stronger monsters for years. He clenches his fist to summon his dark powers, but the demonic energy fails to manifest. It's completely gone. Not that it really matters. Minjun is able to crush such small fry with his sheer strength, having no trouble burying the wolf monster's face into the ground. The soldiers are stunned silent by this superhuman display of power. The monster's teeth shatter from the force of the impact. The fact that it dared to attack him still pisses Minjun off, and he brutally crushes its skull with his bare hands. Even without his dark magic, thanks to the lack of demonic energy, he's still not weak enough to be beaten by such monsters. After all, he went through hellish strength training every day back in Hijord. Still, he knows the identities of these creatures, but why have they appeared in this world? He has a lot of questions, and only the soldiers behind him can answer them. But when he calls for their attention, the soldiers are so scared they can barely speak. After some tense silence, the soldiers escort Minjun in an army vehicle out of the restricted area. The corporal warns him that he was wandering too far into a monster-infested zone. Under normal circumstances, he could have been arrested, but since the commander ordered them not to escalate the situation, they're letting him go. "How is it possible you don't know what's happening in the world?" Minjun lies, saying he'd been living abroad. But regardless, this isn't the Korea he used to know. The corporal explains, dungeons appeared when Minjun was around 7 years old. Monsters started emerging in the real world. At first, the military handled them, but then, awakened superhumans with abilities beyond normal humans appeared. They joined the newly established Hunter Corps, wiping out monsters on sight. Before Minjun was summoned by that saint, Korea had no danger in civilian areas. But now, is the world really this chaotic? Are the dungeon power fighter servers gone? If that's true, Minjun wonders what was the point of coming back to Earth in the first place. The corporal grows suspicious. How can someone not know about any of this, even if they were abroad? But after seeing Minjun's strength firsthand, he doesn't dare press further. Minjun cuts in with urgent questions. Did people evacuate safely? Especially game developers. Can you even get a job now? Especially in a game company? What about server storage systems? Are they intact? His obsession with games hasn't faded. He needs answers. The corporal sighs. "Fine. I'll explain everything from the start. The reason the situation got this bad is because of the weird phenomenon that started to spread from the dungeons 2 years ago. One day, the dungeons began to appear much more frequently and started getting larger as well. But the biggest problem was the increasing number of giant monsters that kept coming from these strange dungeons. Because of that, the military couldn't control the dungeons anymore, and the situation got so far as to lock down some of the civilian areas. Since then, the military has been trying different methods to fight back, but they lack in numbers. Minjun is extremely disappointed to hear this explanation. He doesn't give a crap about such matters. The only thing he wants to know is whether the game companies are doing all right because he wants to play Dungeon Power Fighter. The corporal asks the protagonist how old he is, and he replies that he's probably 21 this year. The corporal suggests that he should enlist in the military soon if that's the case, since half of his 20s are about to evaporate into thin air. Minjun doesn't understand. The mandatory military service used to be 5 years for the Hunter Corps and 3 years for regular troops, so why would he need to waste half of his 20s? But since the situation has worsened in recent years, all troops now serve for 5 years, not just the Hunter Corporation. If Minjun is 21, he probably has his enlistment letter ready. What a disappointment. He came back so he could live the rest of his life in easy mode and play his favorite games, but now he has to serve in the military for 5 years. He's furious that he didn't even get to connect with the game servers yet. That's when his phone finally receives some network, and he gets a message from the military. It's an enlistment date notice to join the X Division, and the enlistment date is tomorrow. The timing couldn't have been more uncanny. So the protagonist assumes that this is probably some spam message, but the corporal assures him that it's real and not spam. Once again, it is a huge shock to the boy. How can the military enlist people without even a physical examination? And how does it make sense to notify you only 1 day before enlisting? But the corporal replies that the military is extremely short on manpower and such practices have become very normal. And for the notice, he's sure that Minjun just saw it late. He suggests Minjun go to the internet cafe close to the evacuation center and double-check his status himself. The mention of the PC cafe filled Minjun with new life. When his parents went missing, he just holed himself up in his house and played games. But then he was summoned to Isard when he was in grade 12 without even a single friend. And after years of hell, he gets to experience the forgotten paradise of humanity, an internet cafe where the servers of his favorite games still live, and he can play it to his heart's content. As he wastes away his hours in this haven, he keeps ordering all the fast food that he missed eating in his previous world. Even the waitress is shocked to see how much he can eat. And now that his need to play games has been handled, it finally starts hitting him how the world has changed completely. He checked the internet news articles, and everything the corporal said was true, including the enlistment date that he'd been notified about earlier. As the text message had said, the due date was tomorrow. If he possessed all of his powers from Isard, he would have been able to clear every single dungeon by himself. But for some reason, his body is completely depleted of the demonic energy that is the main source of his dark magic. But it's not like he's defenseless. In fact, he's confident that he can still clear all the dungeons by himself. And after thinking about it for a few minutes, he shouts out loud with his newfound resolve. If it means saving his favorite games from getting wiped out, he has resolved himself to solve everything by himself. The next day, he walked into the National Defense Center as per the enlistment instructions. He was surprised to see so many people who had come for the same purpose. Some were saying farewell to their families, and some to their lovers. No matter where he looked, he was amused to see everyone's depressed expressions. Then the announcer called for all soldiers to report to the auditorium immediately. Kim Minjun guessed the military wasn't how it used to be, but doubted it would be as tough as Isgard. Inside the auditorium, commanders shouted and cursed at new recruits, demanding discipline. They dropped F-bombs in every sentence, forcing miserable vibes on every soldier. The recruits were surprised by this harsh treatment before training even began. Minjun found their insults weak compared to his Spartan teachers from Mard. Ironically, these military instructors were actually nice by comparison. When the battalion commander stepped to the podium, he called for attention. As part of formalities, he asked recruits to raise their hands if they wanted to apply for the Hunter Corps but hadn't gotten the chance. He incentivized them by explaining the Hunter Corps received better treatment and higher pay. Yet no hands went up until one recruit broke the silence. Of course, it was Kim Minjun. The commander ordered the volunteer to step forward immediately. Obeying his first command, Minjun pushed against the ground with such force that the floor cracked. He launched into the air, soaring well above everyone's heads before landing majestically on the podium. The battalion commander could only stare in shock as Minjun introduced himself and declared his intention to join the Hunter Corps. The story continued in Isgard's northern regions, a dark, desolate mountain range of rocky cliffs and lifeless dust. Known as the Forgotten Canyon, its barren landscape meant few inhabitants. Deep inside a cave, a faint light flickered as Kim Minjun muttered to himself about the endless turmoil of being a dark mage. He spoke truthfully. The class was far more difficult than he'd imagined, possibly one of the worst available. Perched atop a dead spider's corpse, he monologued about the dark mage's critical flaw, their complete reliance on demonic energy. Unlike regular mages whose mana naturally regenerated, dark mages had to kill monsters possessing demonic energy to replenish theirs. He recalled the White Wizard's philosophy: mana is always within you, just collect it. With bitter amusement, dark mages had no such convenience. Worse yet, his class guaranteed solitude. No parties would accept a dark mage, forcing him to fight alone. If he ever ran out of demonic energy mid-dungeon, death was almost certain. Yet, despite these realizations, he remained in good spirits. By a bonfire's light, he pondered aloud about the most efficient way to restore and retain demonic energy. No one answered. The creatures around him were dead, 50 massive cave spiders slaughtered, their bodies oozing green goo from gaping wounds. Then a thunderous impact shook the ground. Through his peripheral vision, Minjun spotted the Forgotten Canyon's hidden dungeon boss, Arachnus, a spider 5 times larger than the others, with bulbous red eyes and razor-tipped claws. It lunged. Minjun attempted conversation but quickly realized the beast was mindless, driven only by rage. When Arachnus saw its offspring's carcasses, it unleashed a deafening roar, one that didn't even make Kim Minjun flinch. He's too confident of a dark mage to worry about a spider being his demise. In one swift movement of his arm, he pierces through Arachnus' thick skin and beheads it in just one hit. He took down the boss, and he gave us an answer to his earlier question. What is the best method for a dark mage to restore demonic energy and also retain it? Well, according to Kim Minjun, the answer is to defeat monsters with maxed out strength levels. Honestly, that makes a lot of sense. 645 days before returning to Earth, Min-Old has taken on a dungeon of spiders and their queen all alone by himself and has come out triumphant. Fast forward to the present time, we see Kim Min-jun in a normal-looking environment with a cup of coffee being given to him. "You say your name was Kim Man-jun?" The voice asks him, to which he responds, "Yes." The man in the army uniform then tells him to wait there, and a troop from the Hunter Corps will come by. He thanks the man and acknowledges that the coffee was made by the battalion commander himself, which is a big deal for Kim. The guy sits down with Kim and asks him some personal stuff. "You seem enthusiastic. Why did you apply to the Hunter Corps?" The man asks him. "Things are pretty bad these days, and most people are pushing to return back to the regular army despite them having special abilities. Why do you want to be in the Hunter Corps in particular?" The man is inquisitive. Kim simply responds by saying he has some business in the dungeons. They both stare at each other awkwardly for a minute before bursting out into laughter at the absurdity of Kim's answer. The battalion commander then tells him that since Kim is so funny, he won't charge him for the auditorium flooring that he smashed. While Kim's internally thinking that he's not joking, so why is his answer so funny to the old buffoon? Here we get some context. All dungeons that spawn in Korea are managed by the army, and not just by any regiment. The Hunter Corps are a unit of highly skilled soldiers, and the only way to advance through the ranks is by showing your worth, showing your power in your abilities. Man-jun wants to become part of the Hunter Corps so he can get access to dungeons. He wishes to clear a majority of them by himself, and when that happens, he thinks that he can get the ability to recover his powers. Of course, this is all Man-jun's imagination, and reality may differ from this, though it's still fun to hope. He's so confident in his abilities that he thinks he can probably gain 10 stars, advance 10 ranks, and clear pretty much every dungeon in 5 years' time. After that, he thinks that he can simply relax and spend the rest of his days being a highly paid public hero figure. A perfect plan made by someone who wants to speedrun his life. While Kim Min-jun is contemplating this quote-unquote fantastic idea, Hunter Corps Sergeant Leo enters the room and gives a commanding salute. The battalion commander introduces the sergeant to Min-jun, and the sergeant immediately is interested. He asks Man-jun if he really has hunter abilities, and if he does, he can easily open a status window. He asks Mun for all of his stats. The sheer energy of this sergeant seems to irritate Man-jun. What is wrong with this guy? He thinks to himself. Are all Hunter Corps this frustrating? Anyways, he opens up the status window and starts to check it. He realizes that they had status windows even in his card, so this shouldn't be anything new to him, although it was just numerical values of your stats and abilities, so he didn't care much for it. "Status window," he says, commanding it for his stats. But then his face has an expression of shock. The twitchy sergeant keeps asking him what he sees on the status window, but it turns out the status window shows nothing. It just says error. Sergeant Leo seems visibly frustrated. He had never heard of something like this before. Now, somewhere in Yonggu at the Hunter Corps Training Center, a conversation is taking place inside of the battalion commander's office. "It's been a long time. I haven't seen you in 10 years, says the battalion commander. "Didn't think I'd run into you here. Why don't you take a seat?" Hunter Sun Yunio. Hunter Sun Yunio stands tall, staring into the battalion commander's eyes. She says that she isn't a hunter yet. Just like everyone else who has enlisted, she's merely a recruit. She wonders why the battalion commander has called her to his office and asks her to not give her any special treatment because of her father. The battalion commander shuts down any of her worries and mentions that she was called due to a separate matter from General Sun. He then continues with more information, saying that Hunter Sun won't be getting any special treatment. As the Hunter Corps is already a difficult organization to get into, Hunter Sun is further confused. She asks why she was summoned, to which the battalion commander gleefully responds. "You're a renowned rookie," he tells her. "Why wouldn't I be interested? Seeing as I'm the training commander here?" It turns out the training commander simply called Hunter Sun to offer words of encouragement before her training began. He thanks her for enlisting as a soldier rather than an executive. Someone with her skills would be invaluable in the field. They're always short on skilled, committed individuals, he explains, and he thanks her both as a Korean citizen and as a fellow soldier. The praise flusters her slightly, but she thanks the commander for his kindness. Outside the window, a truck pulls up, reminding the commander of Min-jun. He mentions to Hunter Sun that she might be getting an amusing comrade soon, so they decide to visit Min-jun together. Min-jun arrives with Sergeant Lee at the Hunter Corps Training Center and is immediately awestruck by the building's grandeur. A massive glass-coated structure gleaming brighter than the sun, it leaves him wondering how much taxpayer money was poured into it. The facility's sheer scale makes him question if it houses a PC room. Sergeant Lee, however, keeps him grounded. He reminds Minjun that his recruitment isn't confirmed yet due to the error in his status window. As a special case, Minjun will be tested personally, and Lee makes no secret of his disdain. "If it were up to me, I'd have sent you to the military police immediately," Lee snaps. He warns Minjun that if the tests expose him as a liar, he'll be drafted into the military police without hesitation. Minjun suspects Lee's hostility stems from jealousy but brushes it off. When asked about the test, Lee points to a crimson crystalline rock, a byproduct of dungeons. The red stone is notoriously dense and immovable, even for strong recruits. Lee's challenge is simple. If Minjun can shift it even an inch, he passes. Minjun grins. "That's all? Too easy." Lee's demeanor shifts. He's never seen a status window error before, and Minjun's earlier display, leaping 5 meters onto the podium, defies logic. Yet Lee remains convinced he's dealing with a fraud. Meanwhile, on a balcony overlooking the testing area, the training commander observes with Hunter Sun. He explains that Minjun displayed extraordinary physical abilities despite the status window anomaly. "In all my years, I've never seen such a case," he admits, voicing high expectations. Minjun places a hand on the red stone, recognizing it from Iskard's dungeons. "At this size, I could easily push it away," he muses. He pulls back his fist, preparing to strike. Hunter Sun and Sergeant Lee watch, baffled, as Minjun's punch connects, not just moving the stone, but obliterating it. Dust settles to reveal a gaping hole where the rock once stood. All 3 spectators are speechless, mouths agape. The stone contained no demonic energy. Minjun's raw strength alone had shattered it. What a monstrous bastard, Lee thinks, stunned. The first day of training begins. Recruits N, Hayak, and others struggle through the grueling regimen. Hayak's thoughts spiral from exhaustion as they sprint up endless stairs. Something's wrong. Even before enlisting, I knew Hunter Corps training wouldn't be ordinary, but this, he thinks to himself, trying his hardest to not lose his strength while climbing up the infamous 6,000 steps. Since you'll participate in actual battles immediately, you must train like crazy for 4 whole weeks. You weigh yourself down with sandbags from the very first training session, and you have to climb the infamous 6,000 steps. And Hayak continues as he's obviously not having the best time here. The instructor that keeps hassling you while he checks her finishing time is something already expected here. He's obviously talking about Sergeant Lee Hungo, who they call the Devil Instructor. And Hayak realized that even after such crude training, you could only increase your stats a little bit, and you would be placed right into battle afterwards. He had to endure it just because he was a Hunter Corps recruit. That is what he thought until he saw Manjun. "Are we the problem?" he thought to himself. Manjun, on the other hand, was having the time of his life going through this training swimmingly. He feels extremely light on his feet. If he had all of his demonic energy, he'd be flying. He loves the training here because it's so simple compared to the experience he's had in all his time during dungeon dwelling. Compared to the rags in Isard, this military uniform is definitely my style, he thinks to himself, and he absolutely loves the food that they serve in the Hunter Corps mess hall. Their routine is quite strict. They have to wake up at 6 a.m., and after breakfast at 8:30, their morning training lasts up until lunch, after which they do afternoon training till dinner. However, the one thing that he loved the most about it is that he gets to have free time at night. There's a peace room inside the facility that's equivalent to the level outside of the army, and if you're consistent and truly remain a part of the Hunter Corps, you can do whatever you want with your free time. He's truly living his dreams, from getting paid handsomely, to being fed, and having time to exercise and play games. It was all that Mun wanted. He rushes up the stairs even faster due to the excitement of his thoughts, and the others stare at him confused on how he has so much speed and energy. Sergeant Liu is standing atop the mountain at the end of the 6,000 steps. He hears a large noise of footsteps going really fast and sees Manjun coming up.
Kim Manjun?
Who is this guy? It normally takes an average recruit at least 1 hour to climb the steps. How is he done already? Sergeant Liu thinks to himself. However, Minjun seems disappointed. Is this it? He asks the sergeant and begins pestering him about something he mentioned earlier. Did you say that we would be getting an outing pass if we finish in less than 30 minutes? How long did I take? The sergeant simply chooses to not respond and hands him the outing pass instead. Manjun begins thinking on where he should be using this outing pass. Meanwhile, the sergeant is checking how long it took him to finish, and in June made a record-breaking 21 minutes 1 second and 43 milliseconds, something no one had ever done before. He's the first recruit ever to receive an outing pass. But it isn't everything to have high stats and good strength. The most important thing is the ability to react to monsters for the Hunter Corporation. The sergeant is slowly beginning to see the potential in Manjun. Looks like he'll be paying close attention to the protagonist from now on. Back in the common room, the recruits are having existential crises, worried whether or not they'd have to go through such strict training regimens every day. Inhak is excited looking at his status window. Looks like his stats went up, and the recruit congratulates him. This excited everyone, and all the recruits around Minjun started to check their stats through the status window. He was sitting there wondering, they're all getting excited simply over one stat point? Really? He recalls his training days in Isard where his stats would go up by 10 per day. If he wanted to raise his resistance to physical damage, he would get beaten up until his stats went up. The other recruits begin speaking to him. You've got an outing pass. What will you use it on? And Hayek asks him, and __ is just unsure of what he'll use it on for the time being. One of the other recruits expresses jealousy while another one begins talking about something he heard. I overheard the instructors earlier, and they said no one has managed to obtain an outing pass from Sergeant Lu so far. This excites the other recruits. And Hayek asks Manjun if he works out a lot, while another recruit tells him that it was incredible watching him climb up those stairs like it was nothing. This is something Manjun had never felt, having people chat with him and converse with like he was a normal person. He thinks about his time in Isard. Since he was a dark mage, the people of Isard pretended like he didn't even exist, like speaking to him was some sort of sin. They even refused to make eye contact with him because they thought that he was bad luck. He likes that communication is a thing here, and he honestly is a fan of it. He hears that Hayek mentioned to another recruit, the PC room is open. Are you going to use it? The other recruit says he's too tired, but when Minjun hears of this, he bursts with energy and jumps out of his seat with excitement. The PC room is open? Why are you just telling me this? He runs straight towards the PC room to get to gaming. Minjun and two other recruits are chilling in the PC room, with Minjun feeling more satisfied than he has ever felt in his life. He looks up at the time, it's 9 p.m. He thinks to himself, since it's 9 p.m. right now, I'll get at least 2 hours of sleep when I'm done gaming. 2 hours of sleep was more than enough for Minjun in Isgard. Getting even 1 hour of sleep was a luxury. 2 hours felt like paradise, and he was ready to power through his gaming fatigue. The other two recruits in the room stare at him while he plays Dungeon Power Fighter, wondering, does anyone still play that game? Meanwhile, training continues outside. Sergeant Lee drills the soldiers in maintaining consistent running speed. The exhausted recruits struggle but push forward. Don't increase the distance. Maintain your speed, Lee barks. Anyone who can't complete 40 kilometers in 2 hours gets no breakfast. Minjun, however, flexes his abilities casually. I hit 10 max levels yesterday. He boasts to fellow recruits while sipping water after effortlessly finishing the run. When someone asks why he's not even sweating, he shrugs, this was just a stroll. Another recruit questions, did you seriously game all night except for 2 hours these past 4 weeks? Are you a monster or something? With theatrical flair, Minjun responds, monster? I brought water to share with my lovely comrades. Oh, you don't want it. As he tilts the bottle to spill water, the dehydrated recruits swarm like baby birds begging for food. You guys are like baby chicks. Minjun laughs. Sergeant Lee storms in. Attention, he screams. The lieutenant is very disappointed in all of you. He berates the squadron for their poor performance. Even in our last training week, only half of you meet standards. You're the weakest squadron we've ever had. Minjun privately wonders why Lee keeps referring to himself in third person. The sergeant's face darkens as he delivers grim news. If deployed now, half of you would die within a month. With this pathetic performance, do you really think you can survive the final training phase? The dreaded dungeon adjustment, the ultimate test to become full-fledged Hunter Corps soldiers. Normally, dungeons disappear after clearing their monsters. But rare, transforming dungeons persist, constantly shifting their layouts like procedural labyrinths. These become brutal training grounds, exposing recruits to every possible combat environment. The terrified recruits react exactly as expected. The lieutenant prefers maintaining this tension, handling recruits like racehorses, alternating between the whip and carrot. His promised carrot? A vacation pass for the top performer, 2 nights and 3 days of freedom. He expects cheers but only gets blank stares. Only Minjun's eyes light up at the prospect of vacation. The others find this reward laughably inadequate. Finally, the hellish dungeon training begins. Recruits gape at the massive dungeon gate's imposing size, some still confused about their mission. Suddenly, an army truck nearly mows them down, skidding to a halt in a cloud of dust. Their confusion lasts only until they see what the truck has delivered. The story continues with two very important questions. What were those luminous eyes behind the cage? And what possible danger could the military be planning to introduce to the unsuspecting recruits? Those eyes glared through the bars in the cage with growls that would send shivers down your spine. Upon further inspection, as the eyes adjusted to the darkness of the cage, the recruits saw beasts with large fangs and furry skin. The cage was filled with hounds. These weren't just regular hounds though, they were a bloodthirsty and an absolutely terrifying breed. The recruits were terrified, with two of them quickly choosing to hide behind Kim Manjun while another one of the recruits fell to the ground. Of course, Manjun didn't think of the hounds that way. Instead, he found them to be quite amusing. He thought they were equivalent to tiny puppies and did not fear anything about them. The lieutenant screamed at the recruits, wondering if they were scared of the hounds. He then tells them that those are the monsters that they will be facing during their time in the transforming dungeon. This scares the recruits even more. The lieutenant instructs them to form teams of 4 people before they can enter the transforming dungeon. The goal is to defeat at least one monster and then make their way back out of the transforming dungeon so that they can prove themselves as valuable future soldiers to the Hunter Corps. He gives them a small pep talk and basically tells them to push through any of the pain, and that definitely lifts their spirits up. He then tells them to gear up as it seems that they are about to get some fancy armor for this mission. One of the instructors asks the recruits to proceed one by one and pick up their Hunter Corps exclusive safety suit, also known as the MID-2. This suit looks like a piece of armor shining in silver with a tough and heavy-looking exterior, almost like a steel chassis. However, the only purpose of this armor is to protect its wearer. It is roughly made and is quite rigid along with being incredibly heavy. The recruits seem a little skeptical about it, wondering if the Hunter Corps could have provided them with something tougher. Manjun doesn't like this piece of armor either. He feels really gross wearing it, knowing that this armor has probably been used hundreds of times by previous batches of soldiers. Since this armor costs around 50 million Korean currency to make, he asks the lieutenant if he can take off the armor quickly if he defeats the hounds fast enough. The lieutenant, being a stout bully for his recruits, just tells off the recruits for being too arrogant without even seeing ask the question. Once he sees it's Minjun, he basically just says yes to him. He then takes a moment to remind Minjun that the transformative dungeon is a team training exercise. He has to make sure that his team is safe and secure while also ensuring the completion of their goal. Minjun's always known that the other recruits are kind of incompetent, so he comes up with a plan to teach his teammates how to kill the hounds. He begins to explain it to the boys by telling them that the hounds will leap at them to attack. Once they do, they should grab the hounds by their legs and snap their backs. He continues by saying that if the hounds don't die from that, then they should fold their backs in the opposite direction and then rip them apart into 2 pieces. Manjuan's face is filled with excitement while giving the gnarly details of his plan, but the recruits' faces have an expression of nothing but being unamused and tired of Mun's cockiness. The lieutenant shouts for the hounds to be released, and the instructor opens the cage door. The hounds immediately jump out, galloping at a ferocity the likes of which these recruits had probably never witnessed before, growling and drooling at the mouth. Their sparkling white eyes had a blinding effect on everyone who looked into them. The hounds immediately ran through the dungeon's massive door, vanishing completely. The recruits are confused as to why the hounds did not attack them and went straight for the dungeon. Manjun cleared their confusion by telling them that they saw their home, and their minds gravitated towards it immediately as they had been captured for a while. The recruits understand this, but this makes them wonder how Manjun knows the psychology of the monsters so well. He wishes he could tell someone about his time in Isard. He wishes to tell people that he used to be a dark mage, but that's information that he simply cannot divulge with anyone else at the moment. The lieutenant cuts them off, scolding them for laughing and joking on the so-called holy training grounds. The recruits try to brush the conversation off, but the lieutenant decides that he wants them to be the first team into the dungeon. Minjun and his buddies were the first ones that would go into the dungeon, and that had been decided now. The sergeant waves his red light saber-looking thing, signaling the team to enter the dungeon. The 4 boys begin walking towards the dungeon with one of them having a determined look on his face, 2 of them completely worried about what the future holds, and Mun simply excited to finally get things going. He just wanted to be done with the exercise so he can take off that heavy and dirty chest plate that was polluting his body. The only commonality between these 4 dudes was that they all had big ears. The lieutenant picks up his radio and contacts the instructor team that is waiting inside of the transformative dungeon just in case anything goes wrong and the recruits manage to find themselves in some actual danger. The observer radios back to let him know that the team has entered as he spectates with a corporal from a hiding spot amidst the crystallized walls of the dungeon. The devil instructor, the one all the recruits hate, is one of the 2 on protection duty. He sees Minjun and is immediately surprised, and he wonders to himself about Minjun's prowess. Minjun's scores have been great during the training and he's been performing well in general in all 4 weeks of proper exercise. However, will you be just as outstanding in the dungeon? That was the question on the instructor's mind. Bloodthirsty hound eyes stare at them from within the crevices in the walls, waiting for an opportune moment to strike. As Kim Minjun and his team venture deeper into the dungeon, the wolves prepare to pounce. Minjun remains acutely aware of their stalkers, already calculating how he could kill them with mere forehead flicks when they attack. There's just one problem: this is a team exercise. If he solos all the enemies, his teammates won't gain any stat points. They must contribute. The hounds are about to attack, Minjun warns. His teammates freeze in shock, brains short-circuiting into panic. He reminds them their protective suits are strong, but fear has them paralyzed. Taking charge, Minjun steps forward just as the first hound lunges. A quick sidestep, a single punch to the skull. One dead hound. Another recruit screams as a hound sinks teeth into his arm. The beast locks eyes with Minjun mid-bite, challenging him. In a flash, Minjun kicks the attacker away, sending it crashing into a wall, dead on impact. The situation is worse than expected. Minjun switches to battle instructor mode. Fight back or they'll overwhelm us. They smell fear. There's more of us. Use that advantage. His voice sharpens. In a real fight, 2 of you would already be dead from hesitation. Guiding his team, Minjun orchestrates their counterattack. 3 recruits converge on the last hound, overwhelming it through coordinated strikes. Hidden observation points buzz with activity. Instructors watch slack-jawed as Minjun transforms panicked recruits into a functional unit. Some whisper conspiracy theories. Is he really a new recruit? Maybe a undercover instructor? Evaluation results come in. Minjun, perfect scores. Combat prowess plus leadership. Teammates, average, they survived. Thanks to him, the squad celebrates their first major hurdle cleared. Instructors emerge, praising their performance before guiding them toward the exit. Minjun badgers them about his vacation pass and high score, teasing their tough guy facades. Then the ground quakes. It's just the dungeon transforming, Minjun explains calmly. But instructors pale as the exit gate begins shrinking. Radios fail. This transformation came months early. Protocol says wait an hour for the gate to reopen. Hunter Command is assessing the situation. An instructor lies through his teeth. The lieutenant will get us out. Minjun knows better. This is no drill. They're trapped in what's now an enclosed dungeon. The rules have changed. No exit until every monster is dead. Private instructor discussion confirms it. An enclosed dungeon only forms when outsiders enter. Our presence triggered this. Then how do we dash? Kill everything. That's the only way out now. Meanwhile, the recruits sit oblivious, some literally trembling with fear. Minjun watches them, then the trembling walls. His mind races through possibilities. If this becomes a survival scenario, well, at least he's here, that they cannot be helped from the outside at all. The instructors tell the recruits of the situation, and now they're all tensed up. They have to clear this dungeon as 4 recruits and 2 instructors, and they have to do it all by themselves without knowing which monsters have appeared. The unfortunate thing here is that the instructors aren't fully equipped to deal with an enclosed dungeon, so they've got to make do with what they have and keep on moving. The head instructor knows that he'd be in big trouble even if a goblin showed up, since it would take at least 10 minutes for him to even take down one of those. The only plan he can come up with is to utilize the protective suits that the recruits have equipped. He considers using them as a meat shield, to put the recruits up front and defeat the monsters while the recruits try to hold on with their protective gear. However, he feels too responsible for them, knowing the grueling training he has put them through and the trust they have put in him. It would be unfair to them. His self-esteem would not allow it. The recruits are scared, but they keep pressing on and following their instructors. However, Minjun senses something going awry, so he looks back at one of the instructors. The head instructor notices this and begins inquiring what's happening, and then everyone turns to look at the other instructor who seems to be gripping his throat, struggling to breathe. He falls down onto the floor with thick foam frothing out of his mouth. The head instructor runs to him and then he falls down onto the floor as well. Both of their mouths have foam coming out of them, and they are knocked unconscious. Kim Minjun runs to them. He checks on the instructors and tells the recruit that it's nothing serious. They have just fainted. He realizes that he smelled something familiar, so he picks up the instructors and throws them towards the recruits, telling them to catch them. He leaves the instructors in the care of his comrades and tells them not to follow him. He orders them to stay specifically near the exit and not go anywhere. They all scream at him to come back as he begins to go deeper into the dungeon. He begins to sprint into the dungeon, bursting with excitement. Kim Man-jun realizes what's going on. His internal monologue explains to us what has happened. The instructors apparently fainted due to the presence of demonic energy, which he didn't expect to find on Earth. It is something that even his guardians need a protective veil for, and its very existence is that much more deadly for normal humans. It does exist on Earth though, and that's great news for a dark mage like Kim Man-jun. He explains that demonic energy is like a charger for a dead phone when it comes to dark mages like him. He runs deeper into the dungeon and can begin to see the source of the super dense demonic energy. This brings even more excitement to our hero, who simply cannot wait to see the true levels of what he is about to face. However, when he reaches as close as he possibly can, he doesn't see anything nor does he hear anything. There is nothing but the void of silence staring back at him through the glowing purple crystals in this enclosed dungeon. He simply cannot find a single trace of any monsters around him. However, all he had to do was to simply look up. The scent of the demonic energy had led him right towards his prey. Kim Man-jun had finally found a worthy opponent, one that reeked of demonic energy. He saw a large alpha hound pulsating purple with the sheer volume of demonic energy within its overgrown body. It had 4 eyes glistening purple with an aura of demonic energy that surrounded its body. His teeth were as large as knives and claws sharper than cutthroat daggers. This was a proper fight, and one that Kim Man-jun had been craving for ages. He didn't even dream about facing the dark hound in this enclosed dungeon. So this was definitely a pleasant surprise for our hero. You see, dark hounds are extremely different to regular hounds, and Kim Man-jun had already encountered this one before when he was only a year into his time in Isard. He had his first encounter with this monster. He had never seen something so terrifying back then, and he was quite new and underleveled to fight a behemoth like that, so he almost died during that time. However, things were different now. Kim Man-jun is not the new summon. He's the final raid boss, and he was more than happy to see a familiar face. Kim Man-jun decides to take this hellhound head-on, having full confidence in his abilities as a dark mage and a hunter. He knew that he could more than easily overpower the foul creature. The monster was hanging on the ceiling, staring at our hero, and it decided to pounce upon him. He pulled his hand back, closing his fist in the exact same way he prepared to punch that redstone before he got enlisted as a recruit into the Hunter Corporation. The smile on his face was infuriating for the monster, which lunged at him immediately at the first chance it got. He thanked the monster for the meal as he pushed his arm out in such a fast punch that it sent the monster flew through the air upon the slightest contact, its body going limp before hitting the ground. As it died, an insane amount of demonic energy, previously locked deep within its monstrous form, began pouring out. Kim Man-jun didn't hesitate, immediately draining every ounce of this precious resource. The familiar sickening stench of monster blood filled the air, triggering memories he'd rather forget. Dark hounds were notoriously difficult opponents, not just for their strength but for their poisonous blood capable of rotting human flesh on contact. Man-jun examined his veiny hand, now coated in the toxic fluid. Yet dark mages operated by different rules. Where poison should burn, it merely tingled. Where demonic energy should corrupt, it nourished. This feeding frenzy was his first in ages, yet it left him unsettled. Several troubling questions nagged at him. 1. How did a dark hound native only to Isgard appear on Earth? 2. Why was it in an enclosed dungeon? 3. Why had no training manuals mentioned demonic energy? The instructor's shocked reactions confirmed this was unprecedented. Interdimensional travel seemed impossible for a beast this primitive, unless facilitated by someone immensely powerful. Only 2 possibilities came to mind: the dark mage of his caliber, the saint wielding the king's powers. Shaking his head, Man-jun dismissed these thoughts as overcomplicating a likely coincidence. For now, he'd deliver the corpse to his superiors as evidence. The instructor awoke to panicked recruits' voices. As his eyes fluttered open, their relief was palpable, until he suddenly screamed like a man escaping nightmares, startling everyone. The recruits had feared he'd turned zombie, but his first words were of concern for their safety. Their report about Man-jun venturing alone into the dungeon's depths made the instructor's blood run cold. That should warrant immediate expulsion, he fumed, though admitting his own failure, fainting instead of protecting recruits, undermined his authority. Just as he prepared a rescue mission, gasps erupted. Man-jun had returned, casually carrying the monster's corpse. The instructor's shocked expressions became almost comical as they examined the unfamiliar creature. While recruits marveled at their comrade's feat, one noticed the dungeon gate had reopened. The lead instructor, sweating profusely, placed a hand on Minjun's shoulder. "Did you truly solo that thing?" Minjun responded with silent nod. After ordering the others evacuated, the instructor kept Minjun behind. His orders were clear: file an exhaustive report to the lieutenant, include every detail. Surprisingly, he added, don't omit our incompetence either, revealing surprising self-awareness, or perhaps just resignation. His reputation much. He is way too honest of a soldier. He covers his face in embarrassment as he says that they fainted instead of making sure the recruits were safe, and that he has no excuse for letting his guard down in such a vital situation. Finally, he thanks our hero for making sure that everybody's safe and that he really appreciates it. Manjun blushes as he's glad to be of help but a little embarrassed of the compliments. The instructor puts his hat back on, saving the little dignity he has left, and says that he must accept his wrongs as a man. He then says that they must get back as they're leaving the cave with the portal glaring blue lights. The instructor wonders how to report the cause of his unconsciousness. Manjun, on the other hand, is ecstatic. He's just received a bunch of compliments from his comrades and his instructors. It's a good day for him. As he's about to leave the dungeon through the portal gate, a notification window pops up and tells him that the error has been fixed. Manjun is frustrated as he questions what kind of error this even is. He curses at the system, stating that it's as ridiculous in this world as it was in the other world. The window pops up again, and this time it shows him his stats. He has 60 points in strength, agility, and stamina. He also has 10 points demonic energy and an E-ranking possessed skill called corruption. He looks at the window and wonders if that's all, because he finds it extremely strange. Then his eyes glance at something on the window. It states that he's the founder of a cult named Lumi Nuna is my favorite character. He's shocked to find this embarrassing information in the status window. Here we get some background to this particular embarrassment in our hero's life. He started the cult out of his love for a character named Lumi from a game named Dungeon Power Fighter. You see, he created this cult as a joke when he reached the peak of his powers in Isard. This was to get rid of any of the stalkers and creeps that followed him around. They used to pester him a lot and would annoy him into pursuing the world domination quests with him, so he just came up with it to get rid of them. Of course that barely worked, as that only made them like him more. As he looks at his stat window, he realizes that he's gotten much weaker and that his stats are much worse than he expected. He already knew this would happen though, because this was his penalty for the dimensional travel when he returned to Earth. The one thing that bothered him most though was that out of his endless skills only one remained, and that too was a low-ranking one. He's really annoyed now as an expression of pure frustration takes over his face. He compares the situation to a third-rate novel where the hero is sent back to start from level 1. Stories like this made him extremely nauseated. Of course, he knows he can't reach all of his objectives at this rate, but there was a silver lining. His confidence was just as unshaken. He knew if he could reach the peak of dark magic powers before in another world, he could do it again in this world too. For now, his objective was crystal clear. He had to recover his powers as soon as possible so that the game development wouldn't see any more delays due to the monsters popping up. He shakes himself out of it and makes himself realize that it's doable. He knows that his experience here is not going to be much compared to the torture of Isard. The scene switches to the training center where utter chaos had taken place. There were 3 reasons for this: the dungeon gate closing while training was in session, a lack of clear instructions from the lieutenant, and the fact that a single recruit destroyed a new species of monster they had never seen before. This all happened despite the instructors being unconscious. And due to these unforeseen events, the recruits should have received private ranks so that they could enjoy their freedom until they were dispatched. However, that wasn't going to be the case. In the recruits' conjoined sleeping room, they wonder why they're on standby despite the crazy events that occurred in the last week of training. They're annoyed that they don't even get to watch TV. One of them asks Manjuin's teammate if he managed to capture a huge hound by himself, to which he responds by saying that he did indeed see it. Some wonder if Kim Manjun will get the rank of sergeant within 2 years, but the rest aren't so sure because the Hunter Corps exams are known for their extreme difficulty. In the battalion commander's office, we see our hero posting up and saluting the commander. The commander salutes back and tells him to come in, whereas the lieutenant is there on the floor in a very awkward-looking position. The commander tells the lieutenant to get out, and he salutes him before leaving the room with only the commander and Manjun inside. The commander laughingly talks to our hero, telling him that a lieutenant who doesn't check the dungeons properly should be punished. He puts his hand on his seat, beginning to sit down as he tells Manjun that they should leave the pleasantries aside. Manjun looks with wide eyes in confusion as the commander tells them that they need to talk about something. He tells them that since Manjun has received the highest score, He's going to give him a special proposal. He asks Minjun if he wishes to hear it. A crane and a flock of chickens. That's the commander's metaphor. This idiom is used to describe an outstanding person, someone who is much more skilled at a certain thing than the others in their batch. We see the commander sitting in his chair, looking at our hero and thinking how truly extraordinary he is. He is glad that he's alive in the presence of such talent. He never would have thought that there would be a crane in his flock of chickens. Kim Minjun is simply good at what he does, so good that he makes everyone else seem like nothing. The commander's mind is going places. He questions placing Minjun in the regular ranks because it would be a waste of his talent. He realizes that a certain group needs people. Maybe he could fit Minjun in. He tells Minjun that he knows about his ambition to rise among the ranks as fast as possible, but according to the rules, privates cannot take the promotion exams for at least 1 year after passing their recruitment finals. However, the commander proposes an exception to this rule for Minjun. Hearing this makes Minjun's eyes sparkle. The commander begins to laugh out loud, speaking with his commanding voice. He tells Minjun that if he joins the Hunter Corps in Chiron, he will use his authority to grant him that exception. He tells him that if he wishes, he could take this opportunity and wouldn't have to wait another year. Minjun marinates on this opportunity, and the two stare at each other quietly for a moment. The commander wonders if he has proposed too tall of a task for the recruit, because even someone of Minjun's skill would think before agreeing to joining Chiron. Now, Minjun is still thinking about this opportunity, and he wonders about Chiron. The 104th Division, known as the Invincible Hunter Squad, is a place that all his comrades told him to avoid. You see, this is a place with constant snowfall and freezing weather, but it isn't a boring place, because monsters and dungeons appear out of thin air there. It is the most extreme version of the front lines you could imagine. What would Minjun's initial thoughts be? Well, he thinks it's a fun opportunity. He just wants to advance, it doesn't matter where he's placed. And he's also going to be granted a promotion exception. Not to mention, there's a bunch of dungeons full of monsters, which are the best conditions for him to become as powerful as possible. He needs to advance at any cost for his plans to work, because the higher his rank is, the more leveling opportunities open up for him. He looks at the commander and, with determination in his voice, agrees to the proposal. The commander doesn't believe it at first, shocked completely at Minjun's answer. He tells him sternly that he will go, and he has a look of nothing but accomplishment and self-confidence on his face. Outside of the Hunter Corps Training Center, we see a group of newly made privates standing outside with their bags in their hands. We see Private Rock crying his eyes out while saying goodbye to Minjun, telling him to keep in touch. He straight up puts his head out of the car and pesters him about it, but Minjun swears he will. There's another guy just looking at them and cringing. Rock asks why Minjun would volunteer to go to Chiron, and Minjun just looks at his friend and says it's a bit too difficult for him to understand, that his goal is something insane. The sky looks beautiful as the two friends talk. Rock asks him whether it's something like achieving max level 100 times. However, Minjun says he's already hit max level 30 times, so it shouldn't be too difficult to reach 100. His friend tells him he's crazy, with a sense of admiration in his tone. He bids Rock farewell as Rock is still heartbroken to be away from his friend. Afterwards, Minjun looks at him going and realizes that the loudest guy has left the base. He's standing alone outside the training center, wondering why he's the only one standing here. Suddenly, a large military truck pulls up in front of him, and it brakes right near his feet. The door opens, and he hears his voice being called out. He looks towards it, and a large man with a heavily muscled physique and thick sunglasses stands before him. His name is Kim Mi, according to the name tag. He looks at Minjun and asks him if he waited long, telling him that it took too long because of the snow. Minjun looks at the guy with a sense of wonder, telling him that he hasn't waited too long while also wondering what month it is for it to be snowing already. Mi begins to walk away, orders our young hero that they must depart for the squad, and tells him to get in the back of the car. Minjun quietly gets in the back and puts his stuff down on the ground as the ride of his life is about to begin. On the ride, Minjun was glad that he gets to start his life as a soldier. From now, he's not the sort to care much about going through difficult training exercises or battling monsters frequently. However, there is one thing that worries him: he's terrified of hazing. He doesn't want to be in miserable situations where he's getting trolled or pranked by his comrades. He simply lacks the patience for it. At the moment, he is mature enough to know that he must endure it for now. The ride seems to be going quite smoothly, but then the thought comes into his mind that if he hits his superior even once, he will be sent to military prison as a regular soldier.